Hello, hello, bienvenidos, and welcome back for another episode of the UBPod, the sixth episode, another serving, another portion, another edition of the podcast that just refuses to die. And I can't believe that I'm sitting here getting ready to do another episode so soon after the last one. It's a miracle of sorts. It's uncommon. Unlike me to do another episode so soon after the other one, especially since the UBPod series is like the least watched series that I've ever done on the channel. But I still do it because I just like keeping a record of my experiences when it comes to games, since I've always loved games and I probably always will. So I'm thinking, man, okay, maybe not that many people tune in for these, but I also do them for myself, not just for the people who may or may not listen to them. But either way, this is the sixth edition of this show, and as you can see by the title, the main topics here today are Crash Team Racing Nitro-fueled for the PlayStation 4 and inFamous for the PlayStation 3. inFamous was released back in 2009 and it was developed by Sucker Punch, and it was a PlayStation 3 exclusive and remains so to this day because unfortunately it's never been remastered or remade for the PlayStation 4, and who knows? I've seen people suggest this on Twitter recently, and say, man, it would be really nice if the first inFamous, and hell, I say throw in the second one as well, got remade, no longer for PS4, since the PS4 is technically at the end of its lifespan, since the PS5 is set to launch in the next couple of months. And so I say, screw it, remake them. Hey, that's more money on the table. Now that Sucker Punch has a lot more experience and they've made more games since then, why not remake inFamous? All right, it was having completed inFamous and gotten that platinum just about a week ago, and I got the platinum for Crash Team Racing like 2 or 3 days before that, maybe four, whatever, right before that one. I can say that the game is definitely janky. I mean, I always knew that it was janky because even back when I got it in 2011, after PSN got hacked the way that they did, and PSN was down for, what was it, a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. It was crazy. You couldn't play online, and back then I didn't care. And I'm having deja vu, so I feel like I've described this in one of the past episodes. I actually, as a matter of fact, I bet I did. But I don't listen to the episodes after I make sure that after they're exported, and I give them I might give them a full listen. I might skip parts just to see that, hey, the whole episode is there. But I never go back and actually listen to the whole things again, because I mean, if I already sat down here and recorded them, I'm like, okay, I might do these for myself, even though they're not so very much watched. But that doesn't mean that I want to keep listening to myself over and over, saying the same handful of things. But anyway, I mentioned a moment ago that I've seen people talk about inFamous on Twitter. I've also seen people talk about Crash 4 and Crash Team Racing and just Crash in general on Twitter, because in the past month or so, I began to follow more Crash Bandicoot stuff, and now I see a lot of it. And maybe I got to tone it down a little, because I love Crash, but I don't need to see so much of anything, of any game, of any TV show or movies or anything else that I like, because too much of anything is a bad thing. And I get tired if I see the content regarding the same topic over and over and over. But now that I mentioned Twitter, I had the idea right now before I hit record that, like, hey, I should mention in the episodes, because maybe it's not enough on the end screen to say that, to just show that, hey, UBG is on Twitter and on Instagram. And UBG is on Twitter and on Instagram. Those are my two main platforms besides YouTube and BitChute. And YouTube, of course, obviously, I'm just stating the obvious here, the biggest video hosting platform in the world, which is where you're probably listening to this. And if you're not listening there, then you're listening here on BitChute. And I actually get more views on BitChute, believe it or not. That's because BitChute is smaller, it's underground, it's janky like inFamous, and but it doesn't work the same way. Whatever algorithms they have, and I'm no technical expert on any of this stuff, but whatever differences they have, they allow smaller creators like myself to actually get some notice, to get some attention, so a couple of views, even if they're not that many in comparison to what the big YouTubers get here on YouTube. But yes, I should start saying at the beginning of these episodes that you can find UBG on Twitter, you can find UBG on Instagram, you can find UBG on YouTube and on BitChute. And I've decided to start putting the link for the Facebook page as well, because whenever I share to Instagram, that gets shared to Twitter, and that gets shared to the Facebook page as well. Even though I haven't updated the Facebook page with the more recent logo art and whatnot, and a cover art for the Facebook page, and I really do intend to do that soon. And now that I'm mentioning this, I should say that right before, like an hour or two before I started recording, I made a Tumblr page, and I used to have I've I used to use Tumblr regularly years ago. I'm talking probably the better part of a decade ago, and that only lasted a year or two, maybe. Then I stopped using it, but after I stopped using it, I would just have it there so that I could link it with my past Instagram, and so that my posts would also be shared to another platform so they could be seen by more people. So now I'm thinking, okay, earlier I was playing Spider-Man on PS4, and I saw again, like, okay, you can automatically share to well, it's not automatic because you have to tap it, right? So every time you share something on Instagram. But if you tap that, you also share it on Tumblr. And I'm thinking, okay, I used to do this in years past. Why not do it again? So I made a UBG page on Tumblr. And so you can find the page on Tumblr too. And I'll post a link along with the rest of the links for the channel in the description. They're always there. So if you don't want to manually pick up your phone or your tablet, your computer, whatever it is. I don't advise you to pick up your computer unless it's a laptop, because I don't know why you would pick up a desktop. That just sounds pointless and inconvenient, but you know what I mean. Um, so you can find UBG in all these pages, is what I'm trying to say. And the links will always be in the description. And okay, I think that's enough for plugs. For now, let's get into the meat of the topic. And I think we're going to start off with inFamous, because although inFamous is a tedious game to complete, it is nowhere near as hard to complete as Crash Team Racing Nitro-fueled on the PlayStation 4. But I mean, they're two completely different genres, two completely different kinds of games, so they can't be the same in the large majority of ways. One is a kart racer, and the other one is an open world, sandbox game. And inFamous was definitely tedious. More than anything, you will know if you've played the games, the first game, that it's tedious because of certain things you have to do involving specific circumstances and involving having to scour the whole map. And back in the day, and I'm having deja vu again, so I feel like I mentioned this in the past episode. I believe it was a past episode. But I played with this last playthrough that got me 100% completion of the game. It was my fifth playthrough in a span of 9 years of the first inFamous game. But in my first three playthroughs, I never tried to complete them, because back then, those were the early days of me having a PlayStation 3, and I have it right here in front of me on my desk right next to my PlayStation 4. I didn't care about trophies back then. So if I got any trophies when I was playing through the game, I'd be like, hey, neat, they're there. But I really don't care. They just kind of look nice. And I used to think that trophies were pointless. And you fast forward a number of years now, when I got my PS4, I thought, you know what? Maybe I should give this trophy hunting thing a go. I'm not going to be as hardcore as a lot of people are. And I say a lot of people, but I don't feel like I need to do a survey or a poll on Twitter or anywhere, do any kind of research to know that the very large majority of people don't hunt for trophies. And if they do, they don't go hardcore into it. That's a very small percentage, I'm sure, of the overall people that own PS3s and PS4s and PS Vitas. Can you still get trophies on the PlayStation Vita? I honestly don't know. I've never even held a PlayStation Vita in my hands before. I think I've seen one in person once or twice, but that goes to show you the very limited success of that system and the way that Sony dropped the ball on it. But back to inFamous. It was neat to replay the game again, because it had been about 7 years since that last third playthrough. And so it was a nice refresher. There were a lot of lines, a lot of quotes from the characters that I still remembered. Like when Zeke says in the beginning, when you're going on the first mission after Cole jumps off the building that they stay on, uh, Zeke says, "Yeah, running down all those stairs, that sucks donkey balls." And I'll never forget that that's where I got that quote from. And I don't use it every day, but once in a while, when I'm having a conversation with somebody, it just creeps back into my mind, and I say it and I use it just because it tickled me so much when I would play the game back then, and it always just stuck with me. So it was a nice addition to the lexicon back in the day, and it survived all these years since. Um, and Back when I first played inFamous, I knew absolutely nothing about comics. And even now, I'm not gonna ever. You're never gonna hear me say that I'm an expert on comics, because I'm not. I've read a handful of them these past couple of years. And growing up, like, I was always into superheroes. Growing up, I watched the Spider-Man cartoon. I watched, what was it, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and I would watch it in Spanish right here in Mexico. And I don't even remember what that's like. I don't remember really any specific memories of that cartoon. And I remember a couple from the Spider-Man solo cartoon from the 90s. Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was, well, from the 60s, 70s. It was really old. And I know that I watched Batman Beyond. I know that I watched the Batman animated series. I watched several. I think I even watched some episodes of X-Men back in the day, but they're all very blurry, and I haven't seen them since. So I can't tell you, I remember a specific episode. This happens. I might remember one or two from the Spider-Man cartoon, because I remember, for example, Morbius was obsessed with, like, the Black Cats, and, like, he wouldn't leave her alone, and so Spider-Man had to hunt him down and, like, defend her or whatever the fuck. And I remember there were, a good handful of times in which Spidey took on the Green Goblin and the Hobgoblin, whatever the fuck. But anyway, you get my point. Growing up, I was into superheroes. I would watch cartoons like those. I owned a good handful of coloring books of The Incredible Hulk, of Spider-Man. I don't remember what else, but I remember, like, in 2004, my family and I would go to Walmart at that time, and I would get those, and I just loved them. Right, coloring was just fun. This was long before, long before. Well, I mean, back when you're a kid, a year seems like a lifetime, and when you get older, time passes forward. Especially nowadays, like in these months that we've had of the quarantine and whatnot, and things just seems to be getting worse and worse. At least here in North America, because people are stupid, right? And I'm not gonna go on that tangent. Anyway, coloring books, yeah. I did not have friends that I always had friends that always loved Batman, that loved Spider-Man, that loved the Incredible Hulk and whatnot. I also had games of superheroes growing up. I had Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 for PlayStation. I got to play the demo of Spider-Man on different McDonald's, for GameCube, back at the same time in, like, 2004-ish, 5-ish, and then probably a few years after that, because they keep those demo units there, the kiosks. I miss those. Those were good times. I also have played a lot of Spider-Man 2, and a couple of years ago I replayed it. I own a copy for Xbox when I was a kid. I used to own it for PlayStation 2. And then later on, I also got Spider-Man 3 for PS2, and I also had The Incredible Hulk, based on the 2003 Hulk movie, which I haven't watched in probably somewhere near half a decade, and I see it on Netflix once in a while when my sister and I are gonna watch Legends of Tomorrow, or we're gonna watch The Flash, or some other show on the Arrowverse, and I think, man, I gotta sit down, I gotta watch that, because in the past handful of years, I've seen people online say that movie was garbage. And I loved it as a kid, because when you're a kid, you don't know any better. So you see a big hulking green monster, and you're like, hey, he's going to destroy things. He's going to wreck things. Yeah, that's fucking awesome. And when you get older, yeah, that's still pretty fucking awesome. So point is, I didn't have friends that introduced me to comics, but I did experience several other forms of media, about some heroes that were based on comics. But it hasn't been until the last, I don't know, maybe 4 years or so that I've slowly read a comic or two, and then read another one here and there. It's not something I do often. It's something I'll do once in a while, because now I'm a fan, but I'm a casual fan of that whole thing. So during those first 3 initial playthroughs of inFamous back in the day, I didn't have the knowledge to recognize like the standard tropes and like plot basis, I guess you could say, influences of what helped Sucker Punch put Infamous together as a game and as a world. If you played Infamous, you know that Empire City is obviously based off of New York. It's not exactly the same, but you have all these tall buildings, these skyscrapers, and but it's post-apocalyptic, right? Because if you played the game, a quick summary of the story basically is Cole McGrath, our main hero, is just some schlub. I've never said that word, I don't think, out loud. But I was listening to the Jim Cornette experience like last night, and he used it, and it just popped into my head right now. But anyway, he's a nobody, pretty much. Well, as far as he knows. And when he's delivering a package, it turns out the package has what people initially think is a bomb. I'm spitting all over my freaking tablet screen right now, but I'll give it a wipe with alcohol and a cloth after I'm done with this. I'm not used to. I said this in the past episode. I'm not used to talking this fast and talking for this long, these long periods of time with anybody, because I don't tend to do it. When I sit down and I play games with people, or I just have a conversation with them through a call or whatever the hell, or even in person, I don't tend to talk for this long. So it is what it is. But anyway, Cole is a nobody as far as he knows, and he's a courier, and he gets a package, and it turns out that, hey, that package is a bomb, or so they think at first. So it explodes while he has it, and it's what gives him the source of his superpowers. And like I was saying earlier, I didn't recognize the superhero comic book tropes before, but now, now that these years have passed, I realize that, oh, okay, that's obviously what they call an origin story for the superhero, right? That's how Cole got his superpowers, and unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately for the people in these worlds that these people create, but it cost the lives, this race fear, this bomb that people initially think it is, has to kill tens of thousands of people in order to give one person, this person being Cole McGrath, his superpowers, and the whole story takes place in just a handful of weeks, about 3 of them, if I believe, just a little over 3 weeks. And in those 3-ish weeks, Cole goes through a lot of things. He loses people that he cares about. He gets betrayed by his best friend. He takes down the villain that turns out to be the future version of himself, who's really old, and because he's really old, he's really worn down, and he is powerful, but he's nowhere near as powerful as Cole is by the end of the story, because Cole takes him down without much effort. Like, even if you play the game on hard, he's not very challenging. Even though he killed me 3 or 4 times, and that's because he has one attack in the final battle that can 2-shot you, and he has that ground pound that he does, where his like transparent like copies of himself, if they touch you, like I believe those kill you in 1 hit if you're playing on hard as well. But yeah, that's pretty much a story. Cole has a bomb. Turns out to not be a bomb. It turns out to be a high-tech, superpower-giving contraption called the Ray Sphere that gives him his powers. And it turns out that his future self went back in time, literally decades, just to plan to set up Cole and prepare him for a future threat that destroys pretty much the entire world in the future. And the reason it destroys the entire world in the future is because Kessler, wouldn't fight this thing himself, and so the world ends up destroyed, and his family gets killed along with all that destruction, and that's what he does out of desperation and heartbreak and regret and all that, and he molds and shapes Cole into the hero that he was too selfish and scared and stupid to be. And that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. A lot of stuff happens. There's several cool boss fights, and there's a lot of interesting enemies in the game. Completing the actual game, though, but before we actually get to that, I guess I should say, what kind of game is Infamous if you've never played it? Well, like I said in the beginning of the episode, it's a huge. Well, I was thinking about this as I played through the game. I guess for the time, it was a huge game. But not there's a lot of games that have come out since 2009 that are also open world sandbox games that are a lot bigger than that. For example, Skyrim obviously become comes to mind for me. I'm sure something like The Witcher is way bigger. Something like Fallout 4 is way bigger, and Fallout 3 even. But it's more in the first Infamous is more like a Grand Theft Auto, Liberty City, Grand Theft Auto, um, uh, I'm forgetting the fucking names. Not San Andreas. Good God, Grand Theft Auto 3. Yes, and Liberty City, stories, and oh my God, what's the one that's set in the 80s? I'm having a brain fart right now. Somebody, if a lot of people listen to the show, like they'd shit on me for not being able to remember the one that's not Grand Theft Auto 3 and the one that's not San Andreas. But people will know what I mean. Maybe it'll come back to me in a moment. But it's a big world, but it's not a huge world. Not by today's standards. But even so, when you complete the game, you have to do several things that are, like I was saying in the beginning, very tedious. So for example, like the last trophy that I ended up getting was a trophy for the blast shards called Rock Hound, and in that one, you have to collect all 350 blast shards that are in the three different islands that make up Empire City in the three districts: the Neon District, the Historic District, and the Warren. Um, and that is no easy feat. It got to the point in which I wanted to just finish with it all that I ended up looking at one video on YouTube and I looked up one guide that I found in a forum. What the hell was it on? I don't remember if it was IGN. I hope not. I fucking hate IGN. But I took a peek at both. I watched like 2 minutes of that video, and those 2 minutes didn't really tell me anything. I took a peek at that guide, but it was this guide that some people put together that had screenshots of like all 350 locations of all the blast shards, and people said things like I did that. Like some people said that they took these screenshots, right, of this massive guide showing you where all of them were, and they would pass them onto their computer and use Microsoft Paint to scratch them off, like in the maps that these fans made. And I would think, oh hell no, that's a lot of work. Some people were even crazier than that and said, no, using Microsoft Paint, doing that, scratching them off through Paint is too much work. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna print them and do them by hand because that's a lot easier. And I'm like, what? You people are crazy. I'm not gonna do that. And so I didn't. I was tempted to, but nowhere near enough to actually do it. Because I said, no. I trust myself. If you just use the map, right? You keep on opening the map and you're thorough in your search for the blast shards, you can find them. And I would know because I did it. This is the first time that I seriously ever tried to collect them all, and I did them in this first try. And I took a peek at that video and at those guides, and I said, no, I think I can do this on my own, in spite of the fact that there were a good handful of people that would say, don't do it on your own because odds are you're not going to run into it. Well, fuck you guys, because I did it on my own. I found the last one, and I actually even took a couple of photos, and I shared them on Twitter and on Instagram as well. And they're also on the Facebook page because, again, my Instagram stuff shares to Twitter and to Facebook, and it will to Tumblr as well, once again. And the last one I found, I don't think that I'm ever going to forget this. I hope not, because just of how tedious it is. I mean, no matter how much you love a game, I mean, when you have a big open world, how much time do you want to spend just scouring the entirety of it for pieces of crap like blast shards, right? Especially when you've done everything else in the game. It took me somewhere around 7 hours total scouring the islands, and I scoured all 3 islands after I was done with all the trophies and the story and everything else. It took me about 7 hours, and it took me going through the islands twice fully, and I started a third time, but I didn't need to fully do it the third time, because the third time around I started in the Neon District, which is the first island that you start on where the Reapers are, and I ended up finding it in the northeast on a broken pier, and that's where it was. And when I found it, I mean, it was like the clouds parted and a ray of beautiful golden sunshine came down. It was like the gods themselves were blessing me, and I was just overjoyed. And I didn't even get it right away, so I could take those photos that I shared online because I was just happy and I was relieved and I felt like I could exhale. And finally, I felt like this tedious weight was taken off my shoulders, and it felt great. It felt great. It definitely, as tedious as that was, again about 7 hours, it was rewarding to feel and to know that I will never have to play this game again if I don't want to, and I sure as hell will never have to complete it again, because why should you have to complete it more than once? You absolutely don't. You'd be crazy unless you're just a massive hardcore fan and you just feel like I can do it again because it's fun. And then, if you're that crazy, you do something like make another PSN ID just to get the platinum again. I'm not gonna do that, and I love that game. But once again, that was the most tedious one. Well, there were other tedious ones as well, like the one where you have to take down. It's called Casey Jones. You have to take down. That's obviously a reference to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Even I know that, and I'm also not an expert on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But the Casey Jones trophy, you have to take down 25 items while you're enemies while you're in a moving train, and there are 3 different missions, one for each island, for each district, that you get, in which you have to repair the trains. So to get them running on each island, and those are the prime opportunities for getting enemies while you're on the train, repairing it, getting it to work again. And I wish I could say that, I did them all like using those 3 missions. I got like half of those kills that I needed, and then I need to do like the other half post game after I finished almost everything else, and I had like 3 or 4 trophies left. That was one of the last ones I needed to get, and it didn't take that long once I actually said, okay, this is the next trophy I'm gonna do. But I'll tell you this much: it's much easier if you actually do it throughout those 3 missions and you take your time with it. And if I actually saw 1 or 2 people suggest this on PlayStationTrophies.org, because I've been using that since I started completing trophies. Just to for a hint or two, a suggestion or two here and there when I've tried to get a particular trophy or get to through a particular level in any of these 9 games that I've platinumed so far since I got my PS4. People suggested that just in the first one alone, or even you can do it on the other 2 later when you get to those districts, just keep killing the enemies that you can while you're on the train while it's going slow, and just let them kill you and then do it again, and let them kill you and do it again until you get the trophy. And I saw that and I said, okay, I think I'd already done the first one for the Neon District, and I thought, okay, I have 2 more chances to do this. I'll just do it then. And I did those 2 missions, and I ended up not getting them all. So what I had to do was actually get on the trains while they were moving at full speed. And if you've played the game, it's pretty fast. And I would just get on the trains and hope that enemies would spawn close enough, and not on the ground, but on top of buildings, so that I could use my what the hell is the ability called? You can't expect me to remember the names of everything, right? Even though I just completed the game. But that ability that allows you to snipe, right? Where you hold up on the D-pad and you zoom in and you can hit your shots from afar, whatever that was called. But I had to use that, and when you're in a high-speed moving train, I mean, it's a struggle, but it's not impossible. And like I said, out of those 25, I must have done 14 or 15 of them, maybe, and I got the rest, and it didn't take that long, thankfully, and I did it, and I got that. Getting to the story, if you ignore all side missions and just get through the story, playing it on the normal difficulty, obviously, not a cakewalk. There's a bit of challenge to it, but it's far from impossible. You play it on hard, the game is still obviously it's more challenging because you take more damage from enemy attacks, and they can take more damage, but also not hard. Challenging in a good way, but also far from impossible. The boss fights still weren't hard. I remember when I took on Alden in hard, he was I believe I did it first try. When I took Sasha on, I also beat her first try. When I took on Kessler, like I said earlier, it took me like 5 tries because I did like 3 or 4 times. But again, nothing impossible. And there were several other quests that were a lot tougher than any of the boss fights for sure, in which I died a handful of times each. And well, what more can you say about inFamous? Really, I mean, I talked about those. Those were like the most noteworthy trophy, I guess. Oh, there was also a trophy about doing the all 21 stunts. That one is also an annoying pain in the ass because there are like 5 or 6 stunts that require you to be in very specific situations. Like, for example, there was one. I did this the first playthrough on the hero side, and then I did the second playthrough on the villain side. And on the villain side, I said, okay. On the hero side, I got to a point in which I thought, okay, I can't do. I wiped out all the crime in all 3 districts, so enemies didn't spawn often anymore, and I had to go around looking for them. And I had like 3 stunts left, and I thought, okay, when I start this the inFamous playthrough, I have to make sure that I get all the stunts in that time, so I won't have to start a 3rd playthrough, because who the fuck wants to do that when you spend so much time playing this fucking game that's so big? And so I ended up having to do it on the inFamous side, and there was one stunt in particular that took me a while. Took me several hours of total playtime to finally do. It was, what was it, like stunt number 17 or 18, where you have to hit an enemy with a shockwave, and while they're in the air, you have to hit them with a sticky grenade. And if you've played through the inFamous side, you know that the grenades don't stick if you throw them directly at the enemy. They stick once they hit a surface and they split into the other grenades, and then those grenades stick to the enemy. And so I kept on, hitting. I couldn't tell you how many enemies I hit with a shockwave off of buildings, on the floor, on the train tracks. Trying to knock them into the air and stick them with that, and I just couldn't, because it was just tricky. So what I ended up doing is like, okay, since it seems like they won't stick when you launch them into the air, what if you launch them into the air with a shockwave, but then when they're right about to hit the ground, you throw the grenade right before they hit the ground? And I did that, and that's what did the trick. And I'm like, seriously? It specifically says, while they're on the air after you use shockwave. And no, you can do it like that too. So just stupid things like those. And that wasn't the only stunt. Off the top of my head, like, what else? There was another stunt too. No, but that one wasn't as hard. I was gonna say the other one where you also have to use shockwave, and when they're in the air, snipe them out of the air. And they're just stupid things like those. What else was there? I don't know. I feel like those were the hardest trophies to complete, right? Because again, some of the stunts require specific situations that you can't just recreate whenever you feel like it. Then when you're on a high-speed train, nailing opponents, when you only have a handful to go, it can be exasperating, but thankfully it didn't take me that long. And once again, collecting the 350 blast shards when you've done everything else in the game is a tedious and annoying and frustrating pain in the ass. So, if you've never played inFamous, it's a game that I feel like you should play. And if you played it and you never completed it, I'm not sure that it's a game that you should feel like you must complete. I felt like I had to complete it because I like the game that much. And like I was saying earlier, I did it once and I'm never going to do it again because I don't have to. I've proven that I can do it. And like I was saying earlier, I did it without watching videos, without reading a guide fully through it, and without trying to use a guide to find all the blast shards. So I did it. And once I'm done with the games that I'm playing right now, and if you go to my Instagram, if you go to the Twitter, you'll see that the games I'm playing right now are Spider-Man on PS4, God of War on PS3, and Skyrim on PS3 as well. And I wasn't gonna complete Skyrim on PS3, but like a week ago, I made the mistake of looking again at my trophy progression on PS3 on Skyrim, and I thought I remember leaving at 90%. It turns out it was 91%, so just a little bit better. And then I actually looked at the trophies. I said, "What? Well, how many trophies do I need?" And it turns out I need like 5 or 6. And I'm like, "What? I'd be stupid now that I care about hunting trophies to not do it." So I put my current PS4 playthrough of Skyrim off to the side, and I thought I'm gonna start a new one, and I'm gonna get these trophies that I need, and I'll get the platinum for Skyrim on PS3, and then I'll do it again on PS4 because I'm at like 43% completion trophy wise on Skyrim as well, and the remaining percentage of that's gonna take some time. But it is what it is. Skyrim is not a game you should rush through, in my opinion. It's a game you should take your time with, and I've always done that. I savor that game. I've spent thousands of hours in that game. But back to inFamous, there was one thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah, well no, I guess I just wanted to say that once I get done with these games, I will start inFamous 2 because I haven't played inFamous 2 in almost as long as I went without playing the first inFamous. And I think I only played through that game once on each side, so twice in total, and that was it. And that was it. I didn't play it as much as the first originally, and that's interesting because I did say in the beginning of this episode that the first inFamous is janky, and Sucker Punch definitely, like everything that was good about the first inFamous, they definitely improved greatly on inFamous 2. And if you never played any of the inFamous games, I definitely recommend that you do, and I think that you should play them on order because that's how you appreciate the series fully. All right, you start off with the janky first game that's more than stable enough to get the job done, but nowadays you look at it and you're like, it definitely has that grainy, kind of ugly, rough around the edges look that games just had at the time because it was 2009. And although the 360 and the PS3 had been out for, 3 and I think like 3.5 years, or it was more like the PS3 had been out for like 2.5 years at the time, and the 360 for like 3.5 years because the 360 came out at the tail end of 2005, and so it's got that going for it. And then you go from inFamous to inFamous 2, and you're like, your brain just wants to melt or just explode with the awesomeness and the improvements and the improved graphical fidelity that inFamous 2 has. And I have yet to play inFamous Second Son, and I haven't played what the hell was the DLC for inFamous 2 called? Blood whatever. But Gordon has that, and I believe I mentioned this on the previous episode that he lent me his account months ago, so I have access to his games, and he has Second Son, and he has the First Light DLC, and he has the Blood whatever DLC for inFamous 2 as well. So the pieces and newer parts of the inFamous series that I haven't got to, I definitely fully intend to get to, but I like to change it up. I like to have variety, so I just got done with inFamous, and I don't want to just jump back into inFamous right away after I just completed the first one. Right, I want to give myself a little break, not think about Cole and his the other characters for a little bit, so that when I do eventually start inFamous 2, I enjoy it once more fully. And I know that I will, because it's an excellent game. And I should also add that in those original playthroughs for the first two inFamous games for me, I played them on my CRT, on my big Sony Trinitron CRT that I still have. Well, it was a different one, but I mean that's besides the point. It's a CRT, and I played them there, just like I played most of my hours, the large majority of my hours of Skyrim, on a CRT television. And I didn't get the HD TV that I have now, which is a crappy, cheap-end Polaroid that got in this house through a raffle, and it looks great because to me, I mean, going from a CRT, especially like at this point in time, when did I get this? Was it early 2019? So like going from a non-HD TV to an HD TV, because obviously when I got the PS4, that was one of the things I had in mind. I was like, okay, I gotta get myself a TV eventually. And all I had at the time when I got my PS4 was a small HD TV that we no longer have. But that I used that for what was it, like maybe the first month, and then we ended up getting this TV, and I got this one. This one That first one, smaller one, was like 22 inches, so not very big. And then this one that I have now is 36 inches. And like I said, it's a 1080p cheap Polaroid, but going from any CRT TV to any HD TV, even if it's an older HD TV, I mean, it's an upgrade. And although this one is on the cheaper end, it is a modern HD TV, and it's an LCD one, and everything looks great. And sure enough, if even if you're like, say, half a meter away from the screen, you can somewhat make out the pixels, but I don't care because again, going from a CRT TV to any HD TV is an upgrade. So I will be able to replay these games in glorious HD. And yes, I'm very late to the party. I realize that, but I didn't care because, for the longest time, my PS3 was my main system that I would play on. And when I wasn't playing PS3, I was playing one of my many older consoles that aren't HD systems, and I don't have any HD cables or adapters of any kind or mods for any of them. So I just play them on my Sony Trinitron. And so I just, for the longest time, I didn't care about not having an HD TV. I didn't care about, upgrading because it wasn't on my list of concerns. I didn't need one. But here we are. And just like when I was playing through inFamous, I was like, whoa, well, everything looks pretty much like I remembered, but without the scan lines, right? And obviously in higher definition. So when you play the first inFamous on PS3, on my TV at least, for whatever reason, it would automatically switch to 720. I don't know if that's a thing that it would do for everyone, but it definitely did it for me. So that's inFamous. I guess tough to complete. And I don't recommend... if you played the games and you want to go back and try to do it, I mean, sure, give it a go, but it's going to be frustrating. It's going to take a good little chunk of hours of your time. And you might get very frustrated more than anything, the blast shard hunt, because there's so many of them, and it's a pretty big enough place in which you have to look. So do it, give it a go if you want to, but for the average person, I say, no, don't do it. Don't do it because you'll experience unnecessary stress and disappointment and frustration and rage. But that's inFamous. All right, we said that the other major topic that we're going to talk about is also the completion of Crash Team Racing Nitro-fueled on the PlayStation 4. And a little backstory, I used to own the original Crash Team Racing for PlayStation when I was a toddler. Well, was I really a toddler? I must have been like 4 or 5. Anywhere from like 4 all the way to like maybe 6 or 7 years old, I owned that game. And I have no idea what happened to my original copy. I just know that one day it just poofed. Maybe it got so scratched. Because, when you're a little kid, even though I've always been the kind of person to be careful with his electronics and his toys and whatnot, when you're a kid, discs are prone to getting scratched and whatnot. So who knows? I don't know if it got lost or stolen, or if somebody just threw it away, or if I threw it away myself. I have no memory of it. But during the time that I had that copy, I did play it plenty. And I remember I just loved that game so much. I must have played through the adventure mode a bunch of times because I just couldn't get enough of racing against Papu Papu and Ripperoo and what was his name? Pinstripe Putaru and Nitrous Oxide and all that good stuff. But I just loved that game. I know that I just loved it. I remember that. Even though I went so long without playing it because I didn't play the original and I didn't play any Crash Team Racing at all until what was it? Maybe last year, like at sometime at the end of last year, maybe, or was it at the let's see, we're in July. Maybe it was at the beginning of this year, but I played it like twice in local split screen multiplayer on Ivan's PlayStation 4 with my sister, and who else was there? Javier, I think. Yeah, it was when they came to visit not too long ago, and that's where I played Crash Team Racing again for the first time in like a decade and a half, and so it was real nice because there were a couple of stages that I immediately still recognized. Like, hey, I used to love this stage and that stage. Like, for example, I immediately recognized the Hot Air Skyway and the Oxide Station because I remember I used to love that one, just how it looked in the original. And, of course, I love how they look and how they play in this remake as well. But yes, I went that long. And then Gordon, like a month or two after that, Gordon got we all decided that that those of us who didn't have it wanted to get the game so that we could have it as well, so that we could all play it together. And we played it a good amount during these past 2 or 3 months or so. And it's it's been fun. It's been great. And I went from feeling like absolute trash when I first started playing it to feeling like, hey, I can hold my own now. I mean, if I'm here recording, talking about what it's like to complete the game, that means that I did everything that the game asks of you for the platinum trophy. I got through the worst and through the easiest, but the worst is obviously the most notable, and the worst of it all is obviously the time trials against entropy and obviously oxide, because I mean, they're just tough. You have to have an understanding, and I said this on Instagram and the other places. I made a post after I got the platinum, that or was it after I got the gold trophy? No, it was after I got the platinum. Yeah, because I posted a screenshot of it. I like to do that. Again, records. But the time trials against nitrous oxide are definitely the toughest part of the game, because in order for you to get past those, I mean, you could get the game and you could do time trials right away if you wanted to, because it's an option, it's there. But you're not gonna be able to do it if you're just unfamiliar with the game and you never played it before. You just can't, because getting through something like that requires that you have an understanding of the mechanics of the game. And if you don't spend a good chunk of time with the game before you try to take on nitrous oxide's time, you're not going to do it, because you need to familiarize yourself with the tracks. You need to learn them. You need to familiarize. My God, can I not speak? You need to familiarize yourself with how the drifting works, how the boosting works, and how to keep the boost. And you need to be used to getting your ass kicked by computers on hard, which I did. I'm used to that, because before I even started the adventure the first time and played it on classic, on just normal difficulty, I would the large majority of the time that I've spent with the game has been playing with Javier and with my sister and with Ivan and what have you, just our small little gang. And so I'm used to getting my ass kicked over and over again in the game, because we always play on hard. We've been playing on hard during the large majority of the time that we've been playing the game. And so, hard computers don't go easy on you. And you lose more times than you win, obviously, especially if you have other people that are around your level, like Ivan and Javier are with me. I've seen, like, all of us, the three of us, we're the ones that like trade, metaphorical punches in that game. We go back and forth. Sometimes I win some, sometimes Ivan wins some, sometimes Javier wins some. And for like a period of for like a week or two, Ivan would actually Ivan would actually just out of nowhere got extra sweatier, as we like to say among ourselves. That he just got extra sweatier, and he took up his game up a notch, and he would just seemingly win most of the races. And Javier and I didn't like that, and it turned out, and we fucking accused him of this even recently. It turns out that one of the big reasons he would do so good is not because he's played the game more than we have, but because he knew a lot of shortcuts in a lot of the tracks that we did not. So he would use them, and he would not tell us about them. And so by doing the time trials, you also learn you learn the mechanics of the game better, and you learn how to play better, and you also get shown shortcuts that you might not find on your own. And I say might, but you actually wouldn't find a lot of them on your own, because it requires you to keep an open eye out for these shortcuts, and some of them aren't very obvious. So both entropy and oxide will show you a lot of these shortcuts, and you'll learn how to take them. You learn how to do them, and those will help you out a lot. And that's definitely made a major difference for me. Like, for example, the learning how to take the shortcut in Sewer Speedway. Sewer Speedway is the first track that I struggled with in the time trials. Because I was trying to do them in order, and I ended up not doing them in order, because for like 2 or 3 nights, Javier and I stayed up, and we would actually just not race against each other, but actually just do the time trials and talk while we did them, right? And say, hey, look, this part of this track is challenging, or this track in general is challenging, and it's taken me, dozens and dozens of tries or whatnot. And Sewer Speedway was the first track that I struggled with greatly. It took me, my God, it must have been, I didn't keep exact track, but it took me like 60 something tries to do it. So that's how you know that was a hard track. Then I struggled. I also said this in the Instagram post that I also struggled with other tracks like Oxide Station. Although that one actually only took me like 6 tries against Oxide, it took me like 10 against Entropy. So that should tell you that, hey, yeah, I did get better. I struggled with oh my God, I'm having a brain fart now. Hyper Speedway, Sewer Speedway, Dragon Mines, and there was one more. But there were 4 specifically that I struggled with, that I had to do dozens and dozens of times. And it was Tiny Temple. Tiny Temple was the other one. That one. Tiny Temple and Dragon Mines were by far the absolute hardest, because as hard as Sewer Speedway was, again, the first track that I struggled with, I knew that once I was able to get the shortcut all 3 laps in a row, that I was going to be able to do it. Because in all of these tracks, when you're racing against Oxide, you have to know how to keep the boost for long periods of time. If you don't manage to keep them for 100% of the time, from the first time you get it, and throughout all 3 laps of each race, then you got to at least keep it most of the time. And you got to play as close to perfect as you can. If you bump into something, you're very likely screwed. Well, in these 4 tracks, you definitely are screwed. Because, for example, in Sewer Speedway, what would happen to me is that a lot of times, and Javier could tell you about this too if he wanted to, since he and I are the only ones that have taken on at least the majority. I mean, I've done them all, obviously, since I got the platinum, and I'm here talking about the experience. And Javier, as far as I know, still hasn't done like hasn't done like 5 of the 31 tracks that you need to do to get that gold trophy. And I keep trying to tell him, like, dude, if you're gonna go through the trouble of doing all of these, he says he wants to do them just so that they could make him better, so that he could kick Ivan's ass more. And I agree that's a very good reason, because Ivan deserves to get his ass kicked in this game for not telling us about all the shortcuts that he was keeping from us. But I tell him, dude, if you're gonna go through this struggle, you might as well just go for the platinum. I know you don't care about platinums like I do, but you should, because it's the hardest part of the entire game. If you're gonna get through this, just do the other stuff. Some of the stuff is a little tedious, but you're gonna be able to do it. None of it is gonna take you as long as this takes you. None of this is gonna be as hard. I mean, go for it, man. Get yourself a plat. Why not? Hardest part is almost over for you. But going back to Sewer Speedway, what would happen to me is that there were several things. I would either get crushed by one of the barrels in the damn track. If you get crushed once, it's over. I would go too fast, and I would bump I would just barely touch a wall, or I would jump off a ramp while I had the turbo boost, and I would go so high that I would hit the ceiling, and I would lose all the speed, all the momentum, and fall straight down, and Oxide gets ahead of you. That happens, you're done. If you mess up taking the shortcut in the track, I almost burped, so that's why I sounded like that for a moment. But if that happens to you, or you make the jump to take the shortcut in Sewer Speedway, if you fuck it up once, you're done. You can't catch up to him anymore. And so there were several things like those. If you just barely touch a wall while you're doing a turn, you lose all your speed, you're very likely done. That kind of thing. That was Sewer Speedway. In Tiny Temple, you had to keep the first time you got the turbo, you needed to keep it, and you couldn't lose it, because if you lost it, Oxide would get ahead of you. He would play the track perfectly. He would always have the boost, and you would not be able to come back from that. In Hyper Speedway, it was pretty much the same thing. You just had to take the shortcut that's in the beginning of the track, and you had to keep the turbo and keep going and keep going. And Dragon Mines was the last track that I needed to do. Again, I wanted to do these tracks in order, but I couldn't, because some were just harder, and I thought, okay, this is taking me a good chunk of tries already. Can't do it now. I'll move on, and I'll come back to these later. So these were the last 4 tracks, but Dragon Mines was the last of the last for me. Javier told me that it took him like, what was it, like 24 tries to do it. Not that many. It took me well over 100 tries. I want to say 130 something. Maybe it took a while. It took a while, and I all these tries I did them across like 3 separate nights, and I didn't do them all in one go, because after a certain number of tries you just go numb, and you are focused on what you're doing, but you're not all there. Like I said, you just go numb. So I don't know. It just like wears you down, and you feel like you're not doing your best. So you're like, okay, I've tried 20 times, I've tried 30 times, I've tried 50 times. I gotta take a break now. Maybe play something else, or just not play anything at all for a couple of hours. Come back later or some other day and try again. And so that's what I had to do, like 3 different times, just for Dragon Mines alone. And so it was the last one that I completed. And again, easily the hardest part of the game. So if you love Crash Team Racing and you think that you can platinum it, the time trials against Oxide have a very high chance of scaring you off completely from wanting to do it, because it's just they're easily the toughest part of the game. I keep saying that, but it's true. I realize that I repeat myself a lot in these podcasts, but they're just points that I feel like I have to hammer home. All right, these are tough games. Crash Team Racing, I would say, is easily a lot tougher than inFamous, because again, inFamous, some trophies are just tedious, and some trophies are due to circumstance. But Crash Team Racing actually has a lot of challenge in what it asks of you, especially these Oxide time trials. So if the Oxide time trials aren't enough to scare you off, you also have other things like play through the adventure mode. You gotta do it twice, and you do it the first time in just the regular difficulty on medium. That's pretty much a cakewalk. But you also have to do all the other stuff, right? You have to get all the relics. You have to get all the gems. You have to get all the CTR tokens. You have to so you have to do the 4 cups, or was it 5 cups? I think it was 5 cups, right? Was it 4 or 5? But you have to do that. So that in itself isn't very challenging. The bosses aren't challenging either, but it's just time consuming. But you do it, and for the most part, it's a cakewalk. Then you do the adventure mode again on hard, and you don't have to get all the relics and the gems and all the other side stuff again. You just race through all the tracks again, win in first place, get the trophies, and then you beat the bosses again, and you beat Nitro's Oxide again on hard, and you get that trophy. And before I got my ass kicked over and over and over, by playing with the guys and the girls on hard, the way that I did, I was afraid. I'm like, oh man, getting into the adventure on hard, that's gonna be a bitch. I'm not gonna be able to do that. But by the time I finished the adventure mode, I thought, no. Like I'm gonna be able to do this. It's not gonna take me. If I struggle, I might struggle with 1 or 2 tracks or 1 or 2 bosses, and that'll be it. And lo and behold, I don't remember struggling really with anything. The bosses felt the same in hard as it did on my classic playthrough on medium, because the first time I did classic, and then I did Nitro-fueled on hard, because I thought I already did it on classic. Why not? I'll choose whoever the fuck I want, use the cars, whatever cars I want, play with whatever driving style I want. And then there was other stuff that was also tedious, like for example, the trophy for the crystal challenges. That was the last trophy that I got. And again, just like inFamous, going around and collecting shit. And whether you go around collecting shit in a big open world game, or whether you go around collecting shit in a kart racer, it's not the most fun thing in the world. You don't want to do that, because especially when you experience the rest of the game. When you're playing a big open world game, you want to do quests. You want to do main quests and you want to do side quests, right? You want to see what the world has to offer. You want to explore. When you're playing a kart racer, you want a kart race. You want to do some racing. That's what that's the backbone of any kart racer ever. From Crash Team Racing to Crash Nitro Kart to Mario Kart to Madagascar Karts on Nintendo DS and Wii, I think. Did that also release for Wii? To Diddy Kong Racing on the N64. And there's many kart racers out there. There's the Nickelodeon one that got ported to Switch, and I don't know if it got ported to other systems, but it was originally a mobile game. There's a lot of kart racers out there, is what I'm saying. But yeah, just like you don't want to go around collecting blast shards, you don't want to go around collecting crystals, but you have to do it if you want to platinum the game. And in the crystal challenge, the only thing that I really struggled with was doing what was it, the tiny arena, I think it was the one with the tiny theme. And that one I actually did have to look up a video for, because I just kept on trying, and so I've dozens of tries on my own, and I thought, okay, like, I don't know, I've tried starting different ways, going, starting differently and ending differently and whatnot, and but all those crystals that they put on the edges were just a pain in the ass, and I just couldn't figure out a way on my own to do it. So I had to look up a video. I think it was Power Picks on YouTube, and I looked at how he did it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna do it exactly the same, because trying to retrace all the steps that guy did, and that, or girl, I don't know their gender, I don't want to assume their gender, but trying to retrace all the steps that they did exactly, I mean, the video was like 2 minutes long, so you're like, nah, I can't, you can't remember how they did everything exactly. So I thought I'll start off the same, but after the start, I'll go off and try to do it on my own, and that's what I did. And after a handful of tries, I did it. So I got past that as well. And that was like the only track that really gave me, the only arena that gave me trouble in the Crystal Challenge. I also had to do there was a trophy for using all the items in the racing modes and also in the battle modes. And I just did that on my own. You just put a single computer opponent, and you put them on easy, and you just hit them with everything. Capture the flag, whatever the fuck, those modes, and that's it. That's not a challenge. Getting to the adventure mode again wasn't challenging. Doing it on hard wasn't that challenging. There was a trophy for like winning by like a 0.3 second margin. There was a trophy that I had to I did the 0.3 second trophy long ago, like when I first started playing the game on accident. There was a trophy for successfully hitting an enemy with with the 3 rockets that you get from the 3 rocket item. There was another for hitting somebody with a beaker that's ahead of you if you throw it forward. Just stuff like that. But once again, the hardest part of the game is easily the Oxide time trials. So if you want to complete the game, that's what you gotta fear the most. But in order to not fear it, in order to know for sure that you're gonna get through that, you gotta get your ass kicked a lot first. You gotta play against computers on hard. You gotta play some online. You gotta play with other people that are around your level or better, and so that they can hone your skills and you can grasp the mechanics of the game and you can get better, so that you can complete the game. But just like inFamous. And I did say earlier that Crash Team Racing Nitro-fueled is a much tougher game, and I stand by that. So if you love inFamous, we're at the end of the episode now. If you love inFamous, again, I don't recommend that you get the platinum for it. You don't have to. Just enjoy the game for what it is. Unless you love it as much as I do, and you're willing to put up with the frustrations that getting that platinum requires. Same thing for Crash Team Racing. If you love Crash Team Racing or kart racing games in general, enjoy the game for what it is, but don't try to complete it, because it's a hardcore game and what it asks from you. And it'll give you just as much, if not way more, frustration than something like inFamous. So I don't recommend that you do it if you're more of a casual player and you just want to race for fun with your friends or by yourself. If you want to do the adventure, that stuff. Go for it. You just want to unlock all the characters. There's no trophies except for one, which was for unlocking the original roster of the game. But other than that, there were no other trophies for unlocking all the characters. So if you want to play just to keep on getting Wumpa coins and unlocking all the characters and the skins and the cards and whatnot, you're gonna have more fun doing that than actually trying to platinum the game. But with that said, we're at like an hour and 20 minutes of this thing. I had to do it in 2 parts because I had to stop because my sister came into the room earlier and she's like, oh, can you let the dogs inside your room because it's hot outside? And I said, yeah, okay, we'll let them in, even though their dog hair is going to get all over my floor and whatnot. But I thought, okay, here in this part of Mexico, it's really, really hot, and the humidity has been a major pain these past number of weeks on and off. So I thought, yeah, okay, we'll let them in so that, they can cool off in here, not suffer through the heat. But that's what it's like to, complete inFamous and Crash Team Racing Nitro-fueled. And you have any questions, any comments, any criticisms, suggestions, or whatever the hell you want to say, you can say that in the comment section. If you got to the end of this episode, I thank you for it, because these are long, but I feel like podcasts should be at least an hour long, if not more. Some of the ones that I listen to are well over an hour long. Some of them are even several hours long, and I enjoy them because I just enjoy listening to what the people that I care about listening to have to say about the things that interest them that also interest me. So if you're interested in games and you make it to the end of these always, I thank you. And so if you share this, and if you like this, and if you subscribe, I'll appreciate that. And once again, the links to the channels, Twitter and Instagram and Tumblr and whatnot, are in the description. They always are, and you see them here on the end screen. But that was it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you for episode number 7. And hopefully that one will release not too long after this one, like within the next couple of weeks, I hope. By then, hopefully I'll have Spider-Man and God of War or Skyrim done. Probably Skyrim, since I only need a couple of trophies, like I mentioned earlier, to complete that on PS3. All right, but that was it. I'll catch you in the next one. Adios.